control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today I'm covering The Outer Limits, and we are going to episode 13 of season 1, Tourist Attraction. Interesting one this, because it was actually made 4th in the production list, but aired 13th, and it first aired on December the 23rd, 1963. Directed by Lazio Benedek, who went on to direct 2 other episodes, and this was his first try, and written by Dean Reisner, who did not return to write on The Outer Limits, and I'll talk about that in a bit. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was very solid. It stars 2 people that I quite like, Ralph Meeker and Henry Silva. Ralph Meeker plays one of the main sort of antagonists, bad guys, good guys kind of thing. He's essentially a sort of a corporate sort of capitalist exploitation machine. And one man, one really. He's a fairly forceful and masculine character. And Ralph Meeker is kind of like that. I like Ralph Meeker. I always have, ever since I saw him in a movie called Kiss Me Deadly, where he played Mickey Spillade's Mike Hammer. And he's a real piece of work in that movie, but he's still kind of good. And it's one of these Cold War paranoia kind of movies about radiation. In fact, there's certain images in it that went on to inspire Pulp Fiction, for example. And also Repo Man. But Ralph Meeker I've always liked. I haven't seen him in many things, but I really like him. He does turn up in a later sort of horror show now and again in the Night Stalker TV series. I think one of the movies, I can't remember exactly, but he certainly turns up. He's a sort of FBI liaison who talks with Kolchak in that. But I've seen him in a few other things, Dirty Dozen, for example, and I quite like him. But I like him specifically in Kiss Me Deadly. So it was kind of refreshing to see him turn up in this. I quite enjoyed his presence. And Henry Silva turns up as the South American dictator. Very young he is, but it's kind of, he's Henry Silva, so he's got a lot of presence. So that's kind of cool. Now, this is set in this little South American country, this dictatorship, and it turns out Ralph Meeker is diving in this water, and they've got cameras down there, and he sees something odd down there. Now, it turns out he's part of this corporate thing, or he runs this corporate business where he's wrecking other businesses that are not profitable and sort of picking up the pieces. And he's picked up 2 people also on the ship with him, who on the boat with him, who sort of have their businesses or where they've worked have suffered because of him, but he thinks he can spot talent, and he's picked up these 2 along the way. First is PA, a lady is a PA, and then a guy who is basically a deckhand, but it turns out he's a marine biologist. And you think a love triangle is going to develop between these 3, but it doesn't quite work that way. Good thing too, because this is a fairly densely packed episode with incident. So one more storyline would not have served it well. I think it balances it quite well. It essentially, they capture this fish thing, and it's kind of slightly advanced fish. It's man size. It's got flippers that almost look like fingers at the front, and it's okay. It's not a great creation. You can see it's a rubber monster, but yeah, okay. Fair enough. But they capture it, and then the plot proceeds something along the lines of Creature from the Black Lagoon, or more like actually the sequel, I think it's Revenge of the Creature, more like. They capture it to study, they freeze it, but it manages to escape, then they capture it again, and this causes all sorts of problems. Now, we do find out in some of the other backstory, and as I say, this is densely plotted, that the dictator is not going so well for him. He's not doing... I mean, they do... It is pretty brutal from the sounds of it. If anyone says anything bad about him, they disappear or, get taken in or arrested. So everyone's kind of careful around him. But it's not going so well. He's arranged a world fair for visitors, but no one comes because it's a dictatorship. And he's a bit bothered about this. And there's some talk also, even the improvements he says he's done aren't very good. There's a talk about he put in a dam and it's already starting to crumble. So it's not great. So there is that. His character name is Mercurio. The dictator's name is Mercurio. Now, apparently, it feels, in the lens of 50 or 60 years ago, or 60, not nearer, it feels a bit like it's a reference to Fidel Castro, but apparently it's a reference to something more contemporary, a dictator called Trujillo of Dominican Republic, who had recently died. He was kind of interest to people in the news at that point. In addition, there was things going on at the same time around research into dolphins and how they communicate by sonar and stuff like that, and that kind of fed into the story too. Now, I have to stress and give credit where credit's due. I got most of this information from The Outer Limits, the official companion, that book by David Schell and Jeffrey Frentzen, which was an interesting read because I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a very solid, well-made episode, actually. There was a few structural issues, which I will raise, but otherwise I thought it was pretty good. Whereas in the book, it's not well regarded. The writers of the book don't particularly like it. The writer who worked on it, Dean Reisner, who only did this episode and didn't come back, even though he was invited, didn't really like the script he put in. Firstly, he wasn't a fan of science fiction, so I don't know why they got him to write this, but so be it. But changes were made to the script to make it sort of a little more appropriate to the episode, and to sort of, I think, scale back some of the budgetary things they put in, the things that affect the budget. And he didn't really like it. The production team didn't really like it for various reasons. They thought it wasn't a great episode, a bit crass, and B, the special effects they had to make 3 suits of this beast. I mean, apparently the original script had almost like an army of them, but they managed to do 3 suits, and they put them way over budget. So there was that reason, and it led to budgetary issues, which I think Leslie Stevens just threw a bit of a fit and sort of told the accountants what for, but it did make the show much more attuned with bringing stuff in within budget, I believe. But so there were some issues around this. But as I say, I quite liked it. It mirrored Creature from the Black Lagoon, as I say, or rather the sequel, The Revenge of the Creature, where a weird sea creature is brought on, not experimented on, but captured and stored, and it manages to escape, and it causes sort of mayhem. There's a touch of that. It's as I say, I really like Ralph Meeker, so I think he delivered. But in the official companion, they described it as like he's acting like he's bored all the time. I don't think so. I think he's acting like, he's on top of the situation, but it kind of gets out of hand. The creature does escape, gets frozen. Now, they just put it in a room here. This is one of the budget things. They just put it in a room, and they say it's frozen, and it's not. Also, it's very unusual in the Outer Limits. We get we get a monologue at the beginning and at the end, but in this one there's monologues in, I think, Act 1 and Act 4 to try and explain what's going on, which is unusual, and it felt out of place to me when it happened, because we just don't see it, so they had to cover some of the cracks. Apparently there was also some rewriting by Stefano, which Reisner really didn't like, where he's talking about the ancient gods and stuff like that, which gives this episode a sort of Cthulhu, a Lovecraftian feel. It feels like they talk about the deep ones, for example. They're talking about, the ancient Indians of the province know about the old gods and stuff like that. And it kind of works, and there is a statue an ancient dug up artifact that looks just like this fish man thing. So that kind of leads to that sort of area. Now, as I say, the writer didn't like it, but I did. I thought it was cool, actually. I thought it was rather well done. And in the end, the creature lets out this sonar cry, which knocks the doors off its hinges and lets it escape. And it gets responses in kind as more of the creatures appear. And they kind of have an attack thing where they're screeching, but there's only a few of them because of budgetary constraints. They only had the three instead of an army. And it turns out in the end, their screeching loosens the dam, which makes it flood, which kills the dictator. So there's kind of a sort of justice. There's kind of nature fighting back kind of story, which is kind of cool, right? And also, Ralph Meeker at one point gets out a machine gun to try and fight the beast, but he's cowed by them, he's terrorised, which changes his character somewhat. He becomes much less brash, and the woman who works for him as a PA finds this more attractive, and actually sort of they form a relationship right off the back of that. So it's kind of the changes it affects in him change his life for the better. It would appear. So yeah, I like this. As I say, there was some structural problems with the writing, which was papered over by in episode narration rather than opening and closing narration, which is kind of weird. It was only brief, but it was still kind of a bit odd. There is a fair few like racial stereotypes of South American lazy people, lazy guys looking after this fish man and, you know, being inept and letting it fall out. There's a bit of that, but that's a thing of its time and serves the story too, so there is that. But I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a very, very solid. And I have no memory of it, though I must have seen it. But I enjoyed it greatly. So, big recommend for me for this one, I think. So, there you go. It's The Outer Limits Tourist Attraction Season 1, Episode 13. So that's it from me. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to